Hi everyone. So I know I said that I would record my birth story here in stories. So figured I would do that now. So there's kind of a lot, and if it seems like I'm jumping all over the place, it's just because I'm trying to remember exactly the times and everything. And then also I don't want to be sitting on stories for 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to give as much detail, but kind of keep it as brief as possible. So here we go. So I went into labor on September 15th around 10:30 p.m. So I had just laid in bed and my water broke, which was extremely crazy to me because I was 38 weeks and 3 days, so 2 weeks early. And I had just had a doctor's appointment that morning and I wasn't even dilated and wasn't even having any signs of labor. Sorry, the baby's down here. He's making noises. He always does this grunting noise. He's not going to the bathroom. I don't know why he makes the noise. Anyways, so I wasn't having any Braxton Hicks or any signs of labor at all. So it was just shocking that my water broke. And I know a lot of people say that it's not like the movies when your water breaks where it's just everywhere on the floor, but mine was just like the movies. It was intense. So called the doctor and they told me to go into the hospital. So the whole hour, we got to the hospital around 11:30, and the whole hour before that, we were packed and had everything ready to go. The car seat was in the car, but it was just so hectic for some reason. I ran the sweeper in the living room because my mom was coming up to watch the dogs, so it was just hectic. Anyways, we got to the hospital. They checked me. I was about a centimeter dilated, so they moved us over to labor and delivery and started me on Pitocin. Since I was only a centimeter dilated, I would have been there forever. But I was there forever anyways. So that was around midnight that they started that. They kept checking me. There wasn't really any progress until about 8 a.m. the next morning. So we are at September 16th now. They checked me at 8 a.m. and I was about 3 centimeters dilated, and they decided that they were going to bump up the Pitocin again to try to get things moving faster. So I decided that I was going to get the epidural because just with them bumping up the Pitocin, I was scared that I was going to start feeling strong contractions and I didn't want any pain. So yeah, I got that. And honestly, I thought the epidural was one of the scariest things just because they come in and tell you everything that can go wrong and make you sign a form. But I was whatever, I don't want to feel pain. So got it. It really didn't hurt. The whole needle thing literally just feels like a bee sting. I thought it was just uncomfortable, the feeling that you get, the sensation down your legs and stuff. I thought that was uncomfortable. And then my legs were completely paralyzed. I could not move them whatsoever, and they felt so heavy. So around 11:30, they checked me again, and I was about 5 centimeters. And when they checked me this time, they gave me some Benadryl because they thought my cervix was a little swollen, and it almost made me pass out, which was kind of scary. But I was kind of happy that I got the Benadryl because I was able to get some sleep, and Chris got some sleep too, which was good. So they checked me again at 1:15 and I was still a 5, so I did not progress at all, which was crazy because we were already over 12 hours in, and nothing was really happening, which sucked. It was super frustrating. So everything was moving very slow. I was tired, hungry, thirsty. Our nurse this time, we realized after the fact that she wasn't really doing anything. I should have been on my side, with my leg up, hugging a birth ball or the peanut ball, trying to help myself to dilate more. But no, and I didn't know any of this, obviously. This was the first time I've ever given birth. So a nurse did that later, and I was why didn't the other nurse do this all day? So I don't want to talk bad about nurses or anything, but yeah, it was just she wasn't really doing anything. But yeah, and then at this point too, I was really crampy and was feeling sharp pains, even with the epidural. they told me that I would feel like pressure, but this was more than pressure. Like I was feeling my contractions. So they had the CRNA come up and like give me I don't know what they call it, like an extra dose. And I had to do that multiple times throughout this whole thing. And it always worked for an hour, but after the first hour, it would just always start wearing off and I would start feeling pain again. So that was kind of scary. And that's when things were just like starting to get really uncomfortable for me. So I think they checked me again at like 4:30 and I was 6 centimeters. So yeah, only a centimeter more that I dilated in all that time. So that was, again, frustrating. So, and I was super uncomfortable. Like I was feeling a lot of pain. I was pressing my epidural button every 15 minutes on the dot. It just wasn't working. So the CRNA came back again and gave me an extra dose. And it worked again for like an hour or two, and then it wore off. So I was basically feeling pain this entire time. It wasn't extremely intense yet, but I mean, it was still pretty painful. So again, they checked me at 7 and I had a new nurse. This is the nurse that was like, okay, let's get this baby out of you. She was putting me in all kinds of different positions. When they checked me at 7, I was 7 centimeters. So the whole 2 hours that I was waiting for them to check me again, I was pretty much like in pain, but like whatever. I was still like flipping from side to side. They checked me again, like around 9 or so, and I was 9.5 centimeters. So I was almost there, so close. And it was just crazy because that was the most I've dilated in such a short amount of time all day. And it was 9 p.m. Let me remind you that I got there the day before that at 11:30 p.m. So I was there for a very long time. And I was at a 9.5 at 9 p.m. So it was really crazy. So we finally got to start pushing though around 10:30. And I was like, all right, like he's going to be here. He's going to be born September 16th. But I was completely wrong because I didn't push for just an hour. So basically the whole time I was still feeling like those really, really sharp cramps. I was in pain. Like I was feeling it. I think the nurse thought I was just feeling pressure and I didn't like it. But this was not pressure. This was sharp stabbing pains. Like the worst pains ever. So the CRNA came up again, gave me that extra dose. It wore off after an hour. Like the same story. He was coming down, but he wasn't anywhere close to like coming out. So it was around 2 a.m. The nurse manager came in. We were 4 hours into pushing, like 4 hours. I was so tired. I was sleeping in between contractions and pushes. Like I was hungry, thirsty. It was so weak and in pain. It was pretty awful 4 hours in. Like I can't put into words how terrible it was, but I was just trying to push through because I wanted him out. So the nurse manager did one series of pushes with me and then told me to stop and take a break. And they all left the room. This is the part that like really, really made me mad because they left the room and they were gone for like 30 minutes. And the epidural like was completely like worn off. Like I was feeling everything. And he was like at the point where like he was just like starting to come below my pelvic bone. So like with each contraction, like they told me to stop pushing and I couldn't just not push. Like it was that feeling where like I needed to push. So I was like, I never thought that I would be like one of those people, which there's nothing wrong with like screaming and like and crying and like whatever, but I just always thought I would be like pushing, like having an easy labor, but no. I was screaming my head off and crying because I mean the pain was unreal. Like I needed to push and they told me to stop and they weren't even in the room. Chris was kind of crying a little bit because like I mean I couldn't imagine like watching someone like go through all that. So finally he pressed my call button and was like, can you guys come back in the room? Like we're in the middle of labor. Like why aren't you in here right now? Like why did we just stop? Like, she needs to push. So if they finally come back in and said, they called the doctor, she's on her way, we're going to start prepping for the C-section because he's not going to come out. So that was really disappointing. And it also wasn't my doctor that I worked with the entire time I was pregnant. It was the on-call doctor. So I was disappointed too that my doctor was going to miss it because I really, really liked him. But anyways, I just wanted him out. I didn't even care that I was having a C-section. Of course, I was scared, but I was in so much pain that I was like, I don't care. Like, let's get me to the OR now. But they were like, we have to wait for the doctor to get here. So for an entire hour, I had to sit in the labor and delivery room to wait for an OR while I was in pain. The epidural was taken out of me at this point because I was about to have the spinal block, so I couldn't have the epidural anymore, but it wasn't working anyways. So I couldn't push either. So for a whole hour, I was having extreme intense contractions and not able to push for a whole hour. I was like screaming at these nurses. I was like, get me to the OR now. Like, I don't care. Like, if you cut me open in the hallway, like, I don't care who does it. Like, I just wanted him out. Like, I couldn't even believe it was happening. Finally, the doctor, after a whole hour, walks into the room. I was like, thank God. Like, I'm still like crying in pain. She checked me one more time just to make sure that she couldn't like vacuum him out, which I'm glad they didn't do that. I think I would have rather have the C-section. And they finally started wheeling me over. And right before this though, Chris like went off on our nurses because they were like, you guys need to gather all your things first. And we were like, oh my God. So like we had shit everywhere. So it like delayed me going to the OR 10 more minutes because we had to like get all of our stuff out of the room. Chris was so mad and he was like so nervous. Like, I felt so bad for him. Like, I was so worried about him because while they are doing the spinal block and like starting the C-section, they can't be in the room. So he was in the hallway and they gave me the spinal block, which was a huge relief because it was a like wave of numbness over my entire body. I couldn't feel a thing, not a single contraction. I was instantly out of pain, which was great. But I kept asking the CRNA, who literally was my favorite person. She was so nice, if he was okay. And I think she went out in the hallway to like check on him, and he finally was able to come back in though. And, they started doing everything and I couldn't feel anything obviously besides like tugging and pressure, which is so strange. Like, to think that you can like, you don't feel pain, but you can feel them, like you could feel them pulling him out. It's so weird. But he finally came out at 3:44 a.m., 8 pounds, 2.5 ounces, 2 weeks early. So he was a big chunky boy. Obviously I couldn't hold him right away, but Chris got to hold him, which sucked because like when you have a vaginal delivery, they will lay him on your chest when he comes out, but I had to wait until we got to recovery. So it was just like super like I honestly was just super disappointed. Like, I went into the hospital thinking like everything was going to go smooth, and it was anything but that. I finally got to hold him though, and everything's great. Like, obviously I'm so happy and grateful he's here. He's perfect, but just everything leading up to it was honestly horrible for me and traumatizing, and it was not a good birth experience at all. And I know like when we have more kids eventually, like I never want to attempt to have a normal delivery again. So I'm going to have to have a C-section, and it just sucks because the recovery is really hard. Like, it was super painful. Like, I just remember like them like having me get out of bed later on that day, and it was just like, it was really hard. And it was even harder watching Chris like change his diapers and like getting to do all of that first, because I couldn't just jump out of bed and take care of him. So like I was like missing all those like first moments. So that was hard. I think it was more like emotionally and like mentally hard than it was like physically. But anyways, I would do it all over again just to have him. Obviously it was worth it and I'm grateful, but obviously I'm super grateful and I'm really glad he's here. So, not the best experience, but I wanted to share with you guys. And if any of you have had a similar experience, I'd love to hear about it and like kind of how you like got over it. Cause I'm still processing that it all happened. I mean, it was just a month ago, and I'm gonna be honest, like I do want more kids, but I'm terrified and I don't really want to go through it again for like at least a little while. So like if you've went through something similar, like how do you get over it? Like it's crazy. But yeah, I just wanted to share my story. Of course, if you have any questions, you could always DM or email me and I'd be happy to answer.